What's the worst thing your boyfriend girlfriend has done to you? I had been dating this guy for about 4 months. We went out for dinner one evening, his treat. I was really starting to fall for him by this point. So we're at dinner and he goes to the washroom. He's gone for a really long time and I check my phone. Text message from him. Bye. Just left me with both our meals which I had to pay for. He drove and so I had to take a taxi home. Don't know what happened to make him leave but probably for the best. He definitely crap his pants. I got married when I was 19. Things weren't great. I went back to school meaning I was in bed by 9 to get up at 4 AM to travel hours to school. We were TCing a lot of each other as he normally worked until midnight. He was working, paying the bills, while I worked to get a better job. One day the bank called me saying they were gonna charge me fraud because I'd used my debit card, inserting paper as a check and taking out cash. It was my husband. I knew something was up. Couple months later I found out he was smoking crack. I searched the app and found spoons, lighters, baggies etc. I asked him and he admitted everything. He was smoking crack every night while I slept. Nothing had been paid and we were basically fricked. I was 15. My girlfriend of 3 years. It was crappy, mind you, but you were 12 when you started going out. When I was 12 I still wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. Dang, I still wanna be a Ninja Turtle. An ex of mine cheated on me in the bathroom down the hall from my bedroom on New Year's Eve. 2 weeks later, I find out that she has hidden the fact that she had a child that a friend was raising for over 9 months. I'm just glad that I dodged that bullet of crazy. My boyfriend failed to wash his hands before going down on me. His hands had slap your mama seasoning on them. My tea was on fire. I briefly considered going to the hospital. We've been married for 7 months now. Upvote for happy ending. I'm posting this for my fiance. About me. The other night, I was sick with the flu. I also ate something that had upset my stomach. On top of the flu. Because I'm an idiot. We went to pick up some medicine for me. And on the way home, I told him to floor it because I needed to throw up and have explosive diarrhea at the same time. Oh, did I mention that we were visiting his parents at the time? It was splendid. By the time we got to his parents' house, I was exploding from both ends. I sprinted to his bathroom and decided to take care of the poop first. Well, after taking the crap of a lifetime, I clogged the toilet. Panicking, I grabbed the plunger and tried to unclog the unholy discharge of my bowels. As this is happening, I'm gagging. The toilet water stopped flowing when it reached the top. And because I wasn't enough of an idiot already, I thought to myself, hey there, let's try to flush the toilet now, so I flushed. Again, the water began flowing over the rim of the bowl. My soft, squishy poop was plopping over onto the floor. At this point, I'm freaking out. By freaking out I mean my brain has stopped working and I'm laughing like a hyena because the only other option is to cry. Now my fiance is worried because he thought I was throwing up so violently, it sounded like laughter. He knocked on the locked door. Bacon Blossom, are you okay, honey? I need your advice through the locked door. What happened? Just let me in. No. After much arguing, I open the door. He looks at me standing in an inch of poopy water holding a plunger. He then looks at the bathroom floor with my little poop nuggets clinging happily to every surface. His mouth just dropped open. It was then I started bawling. Let me wake up my mom. I can't find a mop. He struggled between his own gags. If you love Emmy, you will tell her I tease your poop. What? I swear to God, if you want to marry Emmy, you will take the blame for this and tell her I tease your poop. Needless to say, I don't do well under pressure. He ended up getting some towels and cleaning up my poop off the floor while I threw up in the sink, sobbing, 2 feet next to him. So I'm pretty sure this is the worst thing any girl has ever done to him. I'm also pretty sure that if he can clean up my poop off the ground and still want to sleep next to me, he is a keeper. TLDR. Goopocalypse 2012. Can't wait to marry this man. Marry him right now. Found out my grandma had passed away, my only living relative. I took a personal day at work and rushed home to arrange the needed paperwork. I opened the door to my place. Then GF lived with me, already streaming with tears only to catch her fricking my best and only friend I've known since middle school. Grandma is your bro. She timed it to make sure you found it. Grandma bro got your back. I met him in the desert. I redeployed 4 months before he did. I waited those 4 months. After being celibate for my 6-month deployment, I spent $300 on a dress to surprise him when he got home, and $600 on the airfare, and then approx $2,000 for expensive meals and a hotel the weekend after he got back. After my trip was done and I got back to my base in TX, he told me that he had fun, but that he wanted to play the field, and that all the times he told me he loved me, multiple times a day for 4 months. I should have been smart enough to know he just wanted a guaranteed frick when he got home. I don't date anymore. I haven't even developed feelings since then. Pretty sure I'm broken. You're not broken, but you are hurt, and you have right to be. That was a really crappy thing to do. But if you don't trust someone again, if you don't let someone special into your life, then that idiot wins. Don't let him win. Cleaned out my bank account, took half my shirts, my stereo, all my music, all the dishes, the food from the fridge, and my bed, to run off with her new boyfriend that I didn't know about, all in the span of about 3 hours. Did not leave a Dear John note, had a friend stop by to break up with me for her. That night, I learned to not ever have a joint checking account with a girlfriend, for any reason. For a mind-numbed moment I thought you meant that she cut all of your shirts in half and took one half of each. I realize my foolish mistake, but I rather prefer it that way. When I was a freshman in high school, I got my first boyfriend. He was a year older, and seemed like a cool guy with similar interests. Within the first month, we went to see The Rundown. The date started out pretty normal, and we were the only people in the theater. He started trying to mess around, which was something my prude 14-year-old self wouldn't allow. During the scene in which a monkey jumps on the Rock's face, he decided that he wanted to frick. In the theater, I punched him hard enough and often enough that he gave up. Wisely, I didn't say bye after that. Later in the weekend, we were at his father's house for his band practice. He said he'd like to go into the sauna with me. I should go in and wait. He was just finishing up. After a few minutes, I wondered where he was and decided to check. He had barricaded the door so I couldn't get out and informed me that it was punishment for what happened at the movies. It seemed like forever of me complaining that I was thirsty and my head hurt until he let me out, and I ended up passing out on the floor of his basement. A gigantic red flag number 2 was still not enough to make me GTFO. I told him that the things he did to me weren't right and he promised to change. When he didn't and I tried to break up with him, he threatened suicide. After that, he became more violent. He threw a brick at me once. I dumped him then. He ended up in the hospital because he attempted suicide. I went back. He didn't change his violent habits, and I finally decided that I didn't care if he lived or died after he beat me with one of those metal folding chairs people use for parties. He tried to kill himself 3 more times and ended up in the psych ward. For months after he got out, he continued to call me. For the rest of high school, and until I moved away, I made it my personal mission to tell every girl he dated that he was an abusive butthole who no human being should ever willingly endure. 3 of them came to me after with pretty horrible stories, and thanked me for warning them so they got out before things got as insane as they did for me. TLDR. I was a naive 14-year-old girl who got into an abusive relationship and was too scared and stupid to get out. Okay, you wanna hear crazy? It all started out on one lovely May afternoon. I was at work. My girlfriend texts me. She wants me to help her clean her ferret cage so she can give the ferrets to her friend. I agreed to help her, like any loving boyfriend would. I get off of work. I shower and clean up. I go to her house. I go inside. She begins yelling at me for being my usual 1 minute late. She then tells me that she is too sick to clean the cage, and I'll have to do it alone. No big deal. I go down in her basement and clean the nasty cage, clean my mess up, give them baths and get them ready to go. I'm now finished with my chore. I walk into her room. I had been texting a guy friend of mine. I'm a guy who lives roughly 35 minutes away. He wanted to hang out later in the evening. She worked at 8 PM, so I'll let her know at 8 I would be going to hang out with my friend. This is where it went bad. She gets instantly furious. She starts throwing crap around her room. She jumps up, pushes me on her bed. My car keys fall out of my pocket. She snatches them up and quickly hides them where I'm unable to find them. She bites me on the back, leg, shoulder, and arm. She begins ripping my already thinning hair out. She then chokes me. I'm trying to find my keys. I call the police. She throws my phone and it breaks the screen. I give up and put her arm behind her back. I held it there until the police arrived. I was arrested for domestic battery. She went to the hospital claiming her arm was broken. It wasn't. Oh, and I found out the next day she had fricked my best friend and his girlfriend. BB crazy. All my charges were dropped and I didn't have to go to court. But spending a night in jail changed me forever. TL. DR. Did. X. GF big favor. Want to hang out with friend. She flips crap. I go to jail. She fricks my best friend. I had an ex who had checked out long before we broke up. She maintained that it was a phase, so I tried to stick through it for 4 months. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, emotionally. Right here man. Right here, brofist. When me and my big ex were living together, I had my wisdom teeth taken out. He replaced my Vicodin with ibuprofen, then ditched me to go to ecstasy with an obnoxious fat drug dealer. I was miserable for weeks. I was with a girl for 5 years, lived with her for 3. She had befriended this guy a few months prior and started being really sketchy when dealing with him. Lying about seeing him, not coming home until real late, constantly glued to her texts. 2 days after we had an argument about it, my brother gets into a horrible accident and cripples himself for life. Girlfriend doesn't want to deal with all of that or my family and breaks up with me for personal reasons but still wants to be friends. I want her to move out, but she begs me to stay in the house until the next semester, my name on lease, and reassures me the breakup is not about the guy. About 2 weeks later, I get wind from multiple sources that she and this guy have been considered an item for a while. I lose my crap, collect everything she owns in the house, and place it by the curb. By chance, she did not come home that night. I happened to forget the next day was trash day. Girlfriend at the time had fricked one of my friends on Valentine's Day while I was on military orders several thousand miles away and hadn't seen her in months. That kind of stung a bit. Ouch man, that sucks but. Well, my ex-boyfriend and his girlfriend celebrate their anniversary on the day that my boyfriend called and woke me at 3 AM to dump me from a frat party where they both were. Well, he didn't cheat on you. Got handed off to some other guy at a party because the guy I was dating at the time was not that interested in me. I didn't know anything about the swap until later on when the friend had me pinned up against a wall, and when I protested about how I was in love with X, he said, "Oh, that's okay, this was X's idea, comma." I had a relationship with a guy when I was in high school that was very volatile. He was overly physical with me, but I wouldn't say he beat me. His parents and him moved away and after a few weeks of long distance I broke up with him. He then got on a bus and came back to the city. My parents were out of town. He shows up at my house at midnight, breaks in, slits his wrists in my kitchen and then threatens to kill me. But he cut his wrists so he couldn't. At this point one would think I should have called the police, but I felt sorry for him so I called my friend to come and bring him to the hospital where they said that he didn't cut himself very deep and he was fine. Didn't hear from him for years and then a few months ago he tried to add me to Facebook, so I blocked him. Same sort of scenario for me except a couple of hours after I blocked him on Facebook he hung himself at his friend's house where we had first met 3 years prior. The guilt never leaves. I'm seeing a common theme and just need to ask, doesn't anyone realize that if your ex fricks your best friend then that person was not your best friend? I was told by my last serious boyfriend that he invited me to go live in Australia with him. Lasted 9 months from when I got there, as an experiment to see if he could change somebody to what he wanted. He also said the reason why we weren't fricking on a regular basis, once a month if I was lucky, because he was too tired after working a manual labor job all day. This is coming from a man who stays up until 3 or 4 AM on Fridays watching Bleach anime and playing Xbox. FML. Your red flag of GTFO should have been when he wanted to know if he could change somebody to what he wanted. Made me get an abortion, which he refused to help me pay for, 2 days after my birthday. 2 days later, he dumped me in the middle of a 3-hour car ride in front of my parents while I was still bleeding from the procedure. Do I win? My ex, who is, in point of fact, a W, cheated on me with a white supremacist cokehead. They're together now. If she grows up to be half as obese as her dumbass mother, that will be all the sweet vengeance I require. I misread that as cockhead and was quietly nodding in agreement over here. This will probably get buried. Warning, not safe for life text. My girlfriend knew I was a heavy sleeper. I sleep through a lot of stuff sober, but when I'm drunk I simply don't wake up unless something really out of the norm happens. I slept through our bed collapsing in an earthquake while sober. I was fairly drunk the night after I broke up with her. It wasn't too brutal, just was at her house. Told it to her. We both cried. Then I left. I woke up at about 2 AM to find her on my bed. There had been a toothpick shoved down my dick hole and she had broken it so it splintered. I have never experienced pain as I did that day. TLDR. My ex is now in a psych ward. Not in caps. Can't tell if SRS. This was about 10 years ago. Tim and Sophie are now outcasts at my school. Dang. Your friends know how to hold a grudge. Or you're getting your details mixed up. Boyfriend at the time was rubbing me. We were getting pretty into it and I was about to CM. Right as I started to orgasm, he yelled out CM for Zoidberg. Whoop 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 whoop. Needless to say, it totally ruined it for me. I was laughing way too hard to actually finish. Ever had an orgasm drop right in the middle? It sucks. I punched him in the arm after I stopped laughing, which took a good 5 minutes. An ex of mine from high school was a little crazy. I broke up with her. She snapped and got committed. And when she came back to school she was sitting in front of me in our English class. She suddenly, in the middle of class, jumped up and started yelling at me at full volume. She was rambling on about nothing in particular, as she wasn't sane, but she eventually just ran out of the room at full speed and down the hall, still yelling at full volume. Eventually the principal went over to her while she was in the stairway, but that didn't go over very well. More yelling. She was expelled. About a week later I saw her in the mall. Same thing happened. This time she threw a chair at a security guard and was carried away by the police. I haven't really seen her since. Throwaway. Obviously, I met him when I was 16. My mother was his AA sponsor. Already starts off on a bad note. We dated for over a year. I thought he was off drugs but later found out he was using H the whole time we were together. During the span of our relationship he stole hundreds of dollars from me, overdosed on sleeping pills in my dorm and almost got me kicked out of school. He was constantly lying to me and disappearing at all hours of the night. I bailed him out of jail a few times. Finally, I broke up with him before I left the state over summer vacation. On my 18th birthday he hung himself in his backyard and left me a note saying sorry it was on your B-day, among other drug-induced incoherent jumbles of words. After that happened, I dropped out of school and did way too many drugs for a while. I'm just now getting my crap together, a year later, and have finally stopped blaming myself for his crap. Ugh. Grammar and spelling may be off. I am tired. I had been dating this girl for 3 months or so, went on vacation to see my family, came back and she broke up with me for my best friend. They dated for a little over a year, broke up, and she came crawling back to me. I didn't get back with her, I just let her buy me stuff. It was kind of scummy on both sides. I think all of you guys need to get better friends, or at least be more careful with who you call your best friend. Pretty much made me feel like a worthless piece of crap when she continued to punch me in the face, back, pull my hair, etc. I am a woman BTW. Either way violent relationships is never good, whether you are the same gender or not. Hug. Cheated on me. I broke up with her, proceeded to play countless mind games over the course of a year. Then I manned the frick up and I don't talk to her now. I was terribly sick for a month and had been violently puking a lot, mostly yellow bile. Self-diagnosed myself with an ulcer. Anyway, it was about 4 AM and I was feverish, near death on the bathroom floor and puking. My girlfriend of 4 years walks in and says, "Can you wait to do that? I have to be to work in 4 hours." Thankfully my friend stopped by later that day, who hadn't seen me in months, and took one look at me and drove me to the emergency room. Turned out to be gallbladder disease and pancreatitis. Spelling. I had to have emergency gallbladder removal surgery. As soon as I recovered, I moved out. B. I have had a long line of nightmare relationships. I just seem to find the wrong girls. One of the worst things was a girl who claimed to fall in love with me as a virgin. We dated for about a year before I found out she'd slept with other guys. I kept trying to sort it out, even forgiving her for a while, but she kept sleeping around, saying she couldn't sleep with me because I was special and she didn't want to ruin anything with me. TL. DR. Start dating virgin. After 18 months she had fricked 6 other guys and not me. Almost 3 years ago, I dated my first boyfriend for about 3 weeks. Being my first legitimate relationship, I was head over heels for this guy, so I went on vacation with my family in South Carolina. The whole week I was there, we were talking about how much we missed each other and how we couldn't wait to see each other. That Friday night, the night before I came home, he sent me a message saying that his ex was back in town and that they were getting back together. In his words, he liked me, but he loved him. Naturally, I was up till about 3 AM crying my eyes out while my ex's friend comforted me. I've been happily dating his friend for over 2 years now and I couldn't be happier. But he loved him. That surprised me more than it should have. My ex made me eat beet salad when he knew I hated it. Yep, we were at a BBQ put on by his Russian friend's parents. I managed to avoid it in the buffet line. Then he loudly states that I miss the beet salad that I love so much, in front of said friend's mother, and proceeded to pile it on my plate. He kept bringing it up at the table so I was forced to eat it. You do not get out of eating everything on your plate at a Russian mama's house. Worst day of my life. Meanest thing ever. He wanted purple butthole back deriding. My ex went out of town with her dad. They went, via train, from Phoenix to Seattle. The second night she was on the train, she was being very sketchy to me and not answering many of my texts. She finally called me and sounded a little drunk. We talked for a couple minutes and she said, "Hold on, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. I'm just ordering another drink." She also mentioned that she became good friends with the bartender. Keep in mind, she was 19 at the time. So, she doesn't call me back for another day or two. I'm a little weirded out, but I don't really question much. When she got back, everything was cool for a couple weeks. She then told me that her and her dad needed to go to LA for a weekend to do stuff about their passports since they were going to Japan the next summer. I researched what you would need to go to LA for regarding your passport. Didn't get any leads. I asked if she was cool if I came out there with her and her dad for the weekend. She was very hesitant and said no, because they are splitting a hotel room. I told her I could pay. One night, she gets hammered and passed out in my front seat on the way home. Out of curiosity, I looked in her texts and see these texts from the bartender from the train. Basically, when she told me she would call me back, she went and fricked this dude. Her dad was also aware of this. I immediately pulled over the car, kicked her out on the side of the road. The next day, I reported him to Amtrak. I had his full name, and he was fired. TLDR. Girlfriend goes on vacation with her dad. She fricks a random guy meets on a train that is 15 years older than her. Dad is cool with it. Not quite a direct answer to the ARP's question. However, I was on the other side of the coin. I was in the best friend position. Night started. Me, friend and his girlfriend, still currently dating, went out to the club for a couple drinks and to have a good time. I was the designated driver and third wheel, so I did not drink and was in charge of taking care of this really drunk couple. Girl says she has to grab crap from her house and insists all night long to drop off her boyfriend first as he was passed out by now. While she is grabbing her stuff, she texts me asking if I need company tonight. I tell her I'm tired and don't want to, and then she proceeds to call me a gay P afterwards. I drop them both off at my friend's house and never let him know, as I understand drunkenness, but they are still madly in love and don't want to ruin crap. I have thought about being a good friend and telling him. However, things seem to be looking better for them ATM and I will just stay clear of trouble. I dated a girl who was kind of extremely manipulative and crazy. She lied to my best friend since kindergarten about how I was a terrible boyfriend and such. started dating him, lying to me the whole time, then finally broke up with me. They dated for about 6 months, and my friend admitted he made a mistake. I didn't totally blame him because she's incredibly manipulative. Eventually he realized that, too, though, and now we're best friends again. Forgot to insure or register the car we bought together. T-boned a foreign exchange student with it, snapping his front axle, then refused to drive it when I fixed it up for her. To top it all off, she didn't even sell it when she decided she didn't want it anymore. She abandoned it in a parking lot and let the city tow it away. The only consolation was that the title had been in her name, so I was only out my half of the purchase price instead of all that liability. This will get buried. My ex-husband gave me HPV. Then I was diagnosed with cervical cancer and had a hysterectomy. Then he divorced me because I couldn't have kids with him. Dong. Got herself knocked up by telling me she was on a birth control regimen and that the conception day was literally not a pregnancy day. She was not very forthright about what kind of day that was, and this was her second attempt. As a result, we got engaged, the okie thing to do, right, only to dump my butt a few months later. She got married pretty soon thereafter. It lasted less than a year. Now she's in her mid-late 20s, living with her parents, and trashy as ever. But dang if she doesn't still get nearly half of my freaking paycheck every month. Pro tip, when a girl throws a very real temper tantrum immediately post coitus because you employed the withdraw method, freaking run for your life. As soon as we broke up she proceeded to go to my college account and drop all my classes 3 days before they started. No one should frick with someone's education. This will be too far down for anyone to read, but I just found out that the guy I have been dating for 2.5 months is actually married, and has been since June. We met at the end of October beginning of November, and I had no idea. His wife was actually away at boot camp, so that explains why she never called, texted, communicated with him while we were together. I don't and never will understand why people get enjoyment out of building such extravagant webs of lies. This guy had an answer for everything, too. It was the night of my 18th birthday, which was a big deal because I could finally drink legally in Quebec. I live in Ontario where it's 19, but it's a 15-minute cab ride across the river into QC from where I live. Anyway, a friend's uncle owned a bar over there and the entire top floor of the bar was reserved for our friends. Everyone I knew was going for my birthday. We were all 18 and it was going to be an epic first night of drinking legally for me. People I hadn't spoken to in years were telling me over Facebook all week how they were gonna make it to this epic party. So that evening I'm pre-drinking with my GF and some of our friends and we're all getting super stoked for the party. But I notice my GF has finished almost an entire 26 of vodka to herself. And she was a pretty messy lightweight. But she seemed fine, so WTV. It's all good. We called a cab and got ready to head out. We get to the bar and some of our friends had a few beers to finish before we head in, so they went around the corner to chug them. This is when all heck breaks loose. My GF instantly switches from sober mildly buzzed to full-blown alcoholic drunk. She starts screaming insanely at every person that walks by. Even people from our school who came up to say hi to her are getting screamed at. I tried to tell her to chill but she's past reasoning with at this point. So I tell her I'm going into the bar without her. This, for some reason, brings her back down to sanity level for a moment and she opens her purse to grab her ad to show the bouncer. Oops, guess what? No freaking ad in sight. She's screaming, crying at this point and starts kicking my shins and punching me in the face for no apparent reason. I manage to grab her and walk her to her cab. So we both get in and I tell him to just drive us back to my place. Halfway through the drive, as she's crying sobbing, she vomits all over my lap and the cabbie kicks us the frick out. So we walk about the last 20 minutes to my house. But mind you, my birthday is in December in Canada, so it's about -20°C out and the vomit is frozen to my jeans. In case you were wondering, I was more sober than an AA meeting at this point. We finally get to my house and I drag her upstairs and throw her in the bed. Go take a shower and throw my clothes in the wash. Go back, put the covers over us and just decide to sleep it all off and try to talk to her about it in the morning. 10 minutes after I turn off the light, while she's drunkenly snoring beside me, her bladder says frick it and she pees all over me. TL. DR. Went out for my 18th birthday party at a bar where all my friends were waiting, only to get attacked by my drunken GF who left her id at home, then got puked and pee on, and missed my own party. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.